Yes. Uh, just
Students from 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th. Like it's the full group here, a few students from each standard, and we have various teachers here from SMRJ Jaipuria School. We have been going through the aspects of aspiration, been connecting with flowers, learning about physical, mental, vital. And today we are very excited as the full group of 95 plus people. We have a lot of questions, exciting questions, and we are absolutely ready to have you here. I'll hand it over for a quick introduction. Shri Sraddhalu Ranade is a scientist, educationist, and scholar. He has been residing at Shri Aurobindo Ashram since he was 6 months old, where he grew up in the care of late Shri M.P. Pandit. He is presently involved in various activities, including video productions, teacher training programs, and software development. A multifaceted personality, he delivers talks and conducts workshops on numerous themes, including integral education, management, self development, Indian culture, science, spirituality, and yoga. He has conducted numerous intensive teacher training workshops in integral and value based education all over India. In the last few years, over 4,500 teachers from more than 200 schools and colleges all over India have benefited from these programs. Let us welcome Shraddhalu with a huge round of applause. Over to you, sir.
Namaste. I'm happy to be with all of you. And my apologies of not being able to meet you in person. The theme which we have been given for our discussion now is perhaps the single most important topic that you could ever have as a theme for discussion, because in a sense, all of your life depends on this, discovering the aim of your life. On some level, all of us have an implicit sense of purpose or direction. But it's not always clear. It's not always obvious. It cannot always be formulated in words or in fixed ideas. I remember when I was very young, at the age of going to kindergarten, must have been 4 or 5. As 2 or 3 of us children were walking by, going to the kindergarten, we passed by the governor's bungalow in Pondicherry, and there was a policeman standing with a gun, empty of course, just with a baton. And as we passed by, one of the boys, my classmate, said, "When I grow up, I will be a police." Now, when you think about it today, perhaps even for all of you, you might smile or you might laugh. You will say, they were little children. And yet, when he said it, there was a certain force, there was a certain conviction, there was a sense of thrill in the idea that he would be this. Now, the problem is, as children, our minds are not so formed, and so we are not able to always articulate what we feel somewhere deep inside. And so you see this symbol, you see this image, and you say, yes, this, and you grab the form of it. Of course, he would never become a policeman, because various reasons, some of them being economic, some of them being his family background, whatever. And in fact, though, when he did grow up, he went through various stages. At some stage, he was involved in the security in a bank, among other things. Now, what is interesting is, if you observe carefully his impulse, I'm going to be a police, it was not about actually becoming a police person. It was this thing you saw when the policeman stood with his rifle. He was actually a sentry, almost like what today we will call a normal guard, security person. But the way he stood, and the feeling of responsibility, of power, authority, which was embodied in that position, but even more so, What do you do with that power? Here is somebody who's willing to die to defend something greater. The spontaneous sense of respect that we have for the people in our military, which is much more than a policeman, but it's in that direction. The spontaneous sense of respect. You don't know the man. You will never know his family. You don't know even who it is. Somebody has died recently in some firing, in some border skirmish, in some terrorist attack. You might not even on a personal level care too much. And yet you feel moved. Because here is a man willing to give up his life in order to protect you, whom he doesn't know. Just that feeling that he is ready to die for protecting a million, billion people whom he will never meet, who will never know him, but you're willing to sacrifice your life for something greater than you. It's not just for his family, it's for all of us, the whole country. And you sense that, and it's all happening at a very deep subliminal level. You're not very conscious. You sense that and you say, here is a great person. It's something of that feeling that my classmate sensed when he looked at the policeman and saw there a certain sense of authority or power which is put to service of a greater ideal, to protect, to defend, to stand for, and to be willing to die for something greater than yourself. This was the deep sense felt, not formed in the mind, not even emotionally felt, but deep inside in the soul's aspiration, you say, yes, this is something worthy to be. So, as I started by saying, all of us have something implicit. We don't know always what it is. We don't know how to articulate it. But what happens in real life is, we see these attractive images. Something deeper behind the image resonates, and we catch that. But the mistake we make is to identify with the external form. So my friend never actually stood with a gun in front of the governor's house, or for that matter in front of the bank or anywhere else. But the thing which was like as if a soul ideal, something recognized, actually became a direction of his life's, the form even in which his life went finally. So when somebody asks you, if somebody asks you, and I'm asking you right now to think, you don't have to answer it immediately. What is it that is for you the sense of purpose or an aim or even a general direction in your life? Perhaps at this point you will be unable to formulate. You will be unable to give words to it. But you will feel something which will be like a direction. Even that you will not be able to describe. But you will be able to recognize when something is aligned to that direction and something is not aligned to that direction. For example, some of you may feel a certain call that pulls you in a direction of creative, artistic expression or expression of beauty or expression of some kind of harmony. And when an activity is in that direction broadly, you'll find yourself enthused, you'll find yourself inspired, you'll find it interesting. But when it is lacking that, when it is lacking that sense of beauty, aesthetics, art, creativity, you'll suddenly feel empty, hollow, meaningless, bored. For some of you, the direction may be one of growth in knowledge, in learning, in developing some skill or a capacity. And when things move in that direction of growth, you enjoy. When things turn away from that, where there is no sense of growth or learning, you say, this is boring, not interesting. And you tend to avoid. Or as the case of my friend, it was when there is a space of activity where there is strength, force, power, assertion, conquest, defense, self-defense, something which deals with the aspect of power. He would feel enthused, or not if it is not in that direction. For others, it might simply be an aspect of interaction with people. When I engage with people, when I help people, I feel happy, I feel fulfilled. When I'm all alone sitting by myself doing something, even if it's interesting in intellectual study or some other skill, it does not deeply satisfy. Somebody else may feel a sense of growth when there is an exchange of interaction, of growth, of creation of things. Not just creativity, which is mental or psychological or aesthetic, but creating things, building things, forming things, growing in quantity. These are the things which make you feel satisfied. And the point is, in each one of us, there is a certain turn of temperament, of interests, of aspirations in some such direction. And it is already there. You don't have to do anything to develop it. One of these, at least, sometimes more than one of these, would be there. But if you have to describe it into a form, very likely you won't be able to. And I'm pointing this out especially because when somebody asks you a question, oh, what do you want to be when you grow up? You may give an answer of a form that you recognize, but it may have nothing to do with the form itself. It may have something to do much more deeply with this. And actually your life will go in a completely different direction. I remember another classmate of mine, he was about when we were 10 years old. His parents decided that he was going to become a doctor. So they took him out of the school in which we were and put him into a different school which was more suitable for a career as a doctor. The child was never consulted. Perhaps he may not have been so conscious, but still he might not have accepted to become a doctor. In any case, he trained, he passed all the exams. As it turned out in life, he was never a doctor. What he did do was a business in medical products. And that was more aligned to his temperament, to do the business, to do the transactional activities, to grow in money perhaps, partially, but maybe even that he might have done, not primarily of his interest, just as a survival mechanism for his life, for his family. But there was nothing in him which would have been happy as a doctor. And so, although trained in that, he went in a track which used the knowledge for a very different direction that suited his temperament much better. So, do not rush to give a form in images. And yet we have forms which we are taught, which are sometimes quite abstract, and I want to touch upon these also as an example. I had another friend who, in school, around the age of 20, as we were completing a certain course, the teacher asked, well, very few people really know what they want to do in life, which was not true, but it's okay, that's true also in some extent. Now my friend suddenly raised his hand and said, I know what I want to do in my life. What? He said, I want to become a pilot. Now you see again in the pride with which he came with this, pointed to something deeper inside. But the form that he attached to himself set a direction, but it was not the thing. Very likely he did become a pilot. I don't know. I did not see him for about nearly 30 years. Recently when I bumped into him and we passed, I recognized him and greeted him and he looked at me very dully and just hi and then walked away. He seemed miserable and I don't know why. I'm not putting a judgment on it. I don't even know if he became a pilot. Very likely he did become a pilot. But the point is not that. The fact that he set himself that as a goal very clearly, I will be a pilot. And I don't think it would have taken him more than, let's say, 5 or 7 years to go through all the necessary courses to get to that point where he was a pilot. Having got to that point where he is now a pilot, what would happen to such a person when he has set this as a goal? I have become a pilot, I have reached it. Now what? And he looks ahead to life and he finds nothing for which he can live. Because he has just finished his goal. What do you do now with that? I'll stay a pilot. Yes, of course. A few more years. Maybe another 20 years. Eventually, though, when he will retire, what happens to him? I've been there. I reached my goal 20 years ago and I've just been standing on the spot on that goal, and then what now? There's nothing. It's empty, hollow, directionless. Because he set himself a short-term, limited form of goal which is easily attainable, and then with it, though, there is nothing left to do after. Now, some people will take a more general direction of goal. Let's say they will say, I want to make lots of money. Great. So I had a friend who declared that I want to make 300 crores. So, why? Well, it just sounds like something which is worth it. And what if you make 299? No, I have to make 300. But there was no rationale to the number. It was just an arbitrary number. In reality, and this is a fact for all of you, I can say this. If you had, with current value of the currency, if you had, let's say, 2 or 3 crores in a bank account in a fixed deposit which gives you interest, you could live off that for the rest of your life pretty much like a king. You don't need too much really. But the points would still be, well, once you've got that much, whatever it is you decide, and then what? Or I would put it more differently, what will you do with those? So 3 or 4, as I said, you could still keep as a fixed deposit to do what you want. But if you want to get more, what will you do with that excess money? And you actually don't have an answer. And for many, the answer comes, then I will enjoy my life. Do you need to get to that before you can enjoy your life? There's a very sweet story. It's obviously imaginative story, but you pick a rich person, let's say Elon Musk for this point. And Elon Musk goes to a holiday on the Andaman Islands of India. And he's walking on the beach. He has taken a break from all his busy activities and his creative work, and he's doing extraordinary work. And as he walks around, he sees a fisherman sitting there in the sun, lounging, doing nothing. So he tells the fisherman, well, why are you doing nothing? Fisherman says, no, I'm doing something. I'm lounging. I'm enjoying the sun. So he says, but why are you wasting your time? Why don't you go fishing? He says, I finished my fishing for the in the morning. Why don't you fish more? And what will I do with that? Well, you will sell more and make more money. What will you do with that? Well, with that more money, you will buy a bigger boat so that you can fish 10 times more in the same time with the same effort. Okay, and what will I do with that? Well, with that, you'll buy a fleet of 10 boats. Okay, and then you will earn then 100 times more than what you have now. And then what will I do with that? And Elon Musk says, then my friend, you will be able to sit back and relax and enjoy life. And the fisherman says, what do you think I'm doing right now? You get the point. If your goal is to enjoy life after earning all that money, well, you can start enjoying right now. And if necessary and you need money, you can enjoy while making money or make the money while you enjoy your life. But there's a more difficult question I will raise. What do you actually mean by enjoy life? What it is that will give you the enjoyment of life? And this question won't have a simple answer. Even if you give to yourself a simple answer right now, you say, oh, enjoying my life means that I will do such and such activity. Look at people who actually do that activity, and after a point, or stay with them a few days, and you will see how much hard work is involved eventually just to stay in whatever position of competence in that activity. Because eventually you will always face the necessity for some kind of hard work. But if your goal of enjoyment was to have an easy life without hard work, that's not going to happen. Because inevitably, somehow or other, there will be some requirement for hard work. If the hard work is the kind that you enjoy doing, then you're on the right track. But if it's not, and you think enjoyment is relaxing and not doing hard work, then you will find very quickly you will have nothing useful in life. Because any activity that you take up, however interesting it may seem at first, you went on a holiday in such and such a spot. It was so beautiful, it was so wonderful and comfortable, you were so happy. I wish I could be like this for the rest of my life. Well, if you stay there longer, stay there a few more days or a few more weeks, you'll find all the problems that you have in your home will catch up with you in that holiday destination. Because the problems you had at home are the result of who you are and what you are, and therefore the space that you create around yourself, which you will replicate wherever you go. Just because you escaped that space for a short time gave you the illusion that you were free from all those things, but eventually they catch up. So simply to find a meaningless, pointless form of, let's say, relaxation or holiday is actually painful and difficult. And again, I'll share with you, these are all real stories, except for the Elon Musk story, which is symbolic but quite real if it were to happen with anybody. Another real story, I was sitting with a businessman friend. He had really built a huge fortune from a lot of hard work, and his daughter had just come back from a holiday. And she'd been on a holiday for a week, and she just came home, and she said, I am so exhausted. I'm so exhausted from the holiday that I just had. And I thought to myself, you went for a holiday to break away from the work which you thought was exhausting, for having some relaxation and regeneration, but you ended up doing a holiday which had you more exhausted when you came back. What was the point of the holiday? Now, maybe I'm jumping a little bit all over the place, but you can see there's a broad direction it's all moving towards. Somebody else says, my goal in life, my aim is to become famous. I want to be like, pick your famous person, Amitabh Bachchan perhaps, or Elon Musk, or Prime Minister Narendra Modi, whatever it is you want to be. If your aim is to become famous, well known, and many of you are already attracted to that in competition, but for no good reason, to have numbers of followers on your social media. So you want to become famous. You compete, I have 300 followers, you have only 250. And you have to keep increasing that number to keep on with the race. But you want to become famous. There's a very simple way. You commit a crime which is so heinous that it hits all the headlines, and you will become famous overnight. Famous and notorious. You know these two words. They are almost the same thing. What's the difference? Everybody looks to you, notorious or famous. But if you're famous, they look to you with appreciation and affection, sometimes with jealousy. If you're notorious, they look to you sometimes with shock, awe, perhaps, but then eventually disdain, dislike. But you're still famous. So you say, then I don't want to be famous, I want to be liked, I want to be loved. And the moment you've reformulated your purpose, already your direction has changed significantly. Would you like to be known in large numbers, or you'd like to be liked by all those who know you? You see the difference now. Numbers somehow become less important. Those who know you, those who are close to you, those who you know and respect, you want them to like you and respect you. Then already the direction is completely different. So I've given you a few examples to stimulate your thinking, and particularly to break the conventional fixed ideas that have been implanted into you by the media, by the cinema, sometimes by parents, that keep drilling into you that you have to be either successful or wealthy or famous or some such variation of these. Yes, all of these can be a means to an end or the result of a different goal. Because you achieved excellence in a particular field, you became famous and you became wealthy, you became influential, powerful, whatever it is. And again, I'm going to give here an example, which is the name I mentioned earlier, Elon Musk. This is a man who actually began with practically nothing. Yes, say he had a seed capital from his father. The seed capital itself was a very small amount. And before he could even be given that, they lived for years in abject poverty in South Africa. But with that seed capital, through a series of actual creative development in software and other things, he was able to multiply that tenfold within 2 years. Because of the work he did, the quality, the content, the meaningfulness and the usefulness of the work he did. And it was in the field of software. Subsequently, he took that again tenfold within a few years through a series of investment. But the point was, once he entered with that money into his field, which was then with the Tesla car, that's when he first really made breakthroughs. His creativity, his competence, his intelligence, his power to wield, to carry people with him, to form teams and lead them to a successful closure of a project was so effective. But more than that, if it was merely effective, he would have replicated what others have done. He led them in a direction that was so new that he achieved something which was unheard of, but not one thing, 20 things that had never been done before. And the result was, of course, the stock value of his company shot up. He became wealthy as a consequence of what he did. Later, he became famous as a consequence of what he did. Now, at that point, he had more than a few $1 billion worth. He could have easily said, my goal is to retire and enjoy my life on the beach, remember? That was the reference. He could have done that. What does he do with that extra money? He reinvests it again. And while still continuing the development of his Tesla motor car, he goes into spaceships, rockets. Okay, he had the money. That's not enough. There are others competing. For example, the owner of Amazon company has also started a rocket company. After 10 years, has literally nothing to show for it. Elon Musk, in 8 years, had created with his rocketry things which had never been done before in 50 years, even by NASA. A reusable rocket, a rocket that actually takes off and the part which is normally thrown in the ocean comes back and lands by itself to be reused again and again and again. Nobody had been able to do it before that. And he did that within 8 years. To this day, that's never been successfully as well replicated by any of the other companies, including major governments across the world. Even in the Indian, ISRO has not been able to recreate the reusable rocket to this day. He achieved that within 8 years with a team that he built, which he inspired and drove through his commitment and his technical expertise and his power to inspire people and guide them with energy, with vitality, with intelligence, with love and affection, because you put them and squeeze them with so much pressure, half the people will leave, even if you pay them well. He would himself sleep on the floor of his industries, on the floor, because, well, that was his commitment and that inspired others to follow through with his commitment. That was not all. He went from there to develop the Starlink internet satellite network, which bypasses today's ground-based and cable-based internets, pushed it further, things which have never been done before. Pushes further, creates what is called the Boring Company to build underground transport systems. It has still not come to its fruition, but the point is, he dared to vision, used his own resources and drove people. Neuralink, which is to link the brain to electronics that's another company. A series of such efforts, all of which are things which have never been done before. And there are many more. The point I'm getting to, what did this require? First of all, a tremendous intelligence, a tremendous power and drive, not just to yourself, but to be able to carry a team. Which means when you're carrying a team, it's not your energy for yourself, it's your energy for 100 people. You walk into the room and your enthusiasm has to infect everybody and lift them. They go away tired or come back tired and you give them the energy. So you have intelligence because you need to be smarter than them to some degree, at least to understand when they go wrong or to give them a direction which is reasonable. Strength, power, energy, drive, okay, I'm putting them all in one category. And then you carry a team when you drive them to that kind of exhaustion and with no prior reference. You're completely going into what are called blue sky projects. You're aiming in the blue sky. You don't know whether you will hit your goals. Well, how do you do that? How do you keep them together? How do you keep them enthused? There's a tremendous force of love, affection, caring with which you carry people. You may be exhausted. You may lose hope. But you can't let it out. You can't tell them, oh, I have lost hope. They may lose hope and you have to say, no, we are going to keep going at it. And who do you turn to when you lose hope? Yourself. You have no one else to support you. Remember, you cannot confide in somebody else. You can't put your head on your grandmother's knees and say, I am so miserable, I am fed up, I am tired, I don't know if I am doing something right. Nobody. You stand by yourself. But then with the same love on with yourself as with them. And finally, all of this, you can have all the money, intelligence, and the team to execute. If your product is defective, and the defectiveness of the product can be on a tiny key point, just the metallurgical balance of the rocket's casing is too weak, that under heat, under stress, it cracks, is enough to ruin everything. And to trace that can be the work of months when your rocket crashes. So the competence to take it down to perfection in material circumstances. And he himself actually goes all the way down to the most details on a material level. So a person who has all four capabilities is very, very, very rare. And I'm placing him as an example before you. Another person, and there are not too many such that you can see in the public space today. Another person who has something quite close to this is our current Prime Minister, Narendra Modi. A visioning, a tremendous vitality and ability to drive. And you've seen, perhaps you've heard some of the stories. He is going abroad on a flight, which on the way hops somewhere, has a series of meetings for a few hours with heads of state, moves on to another flight immediately after, and 12 on the other side of the earth, and on a time zone which is completely the opposite. On landing, he gets back into meetings and he meets groups one after another. With each one, he is able to give them the punch, the force, the inspiration, and he has met through 60 groups, at the end of which he meets with the US President then, and the President was shocked that this man has so much vitality. And at that point, Narendra Modi had been fasting for nearly 8 days, just on water. Amazing, amazing vitality. And somewhere he has recently said he sleeps barely 3 hours. Try to do that, your body will break down, you'll fall sick. But if you want to attain to that capability, that's something we're going to discuss shortly. But well, let me finish this. First, the capacity to vision, the power, the drive, the energy to carry it through and to carry people with you with a lot of love and affection. And then the execution, the monitoring of the execution, and then fulfillment in precision, in detail, in perfection, all the way through. These four, so to say, aspects or powers you need to develop if you really want to take a project all the way through to the end and to fulfillment. As a consequence of this, if you want, you can become wealthy, you will become necessarily, or well, in most cases, somewhat famous, well-known, respected, loved for whatever it is that you have been able to achieve. And all the other things which normally people say, I want that, come as a consequence. If you do what it is that gives you the deepest fulfillment and satisfaction and aligned to your capacities which are now taken to their peak. So you understand, it's the reverse. By fulfilling yourself completely, you will gain the necessary resources and the fame and the affections and all the other trappings which come with it. Success, in other words. But your success may be in a field or in a specialty or in a form which may not be necessarily well known everywhere. But to you, it will not matter. Because you will have such a deep satisfaction and joy of having achieved something worthwhile that you will have everything you need to call yourself successful in your life, in fulfilling yourself. So in the Bhagavad Gita, Sri Krishna says that it is better to have lost in your own line of work than to become successful in imitating somebody else's line of work. This is a very important point. So you see somebody do something, you imitate them and you achieve whatever it is, name, money, notoriety or whatever it is. At the end of that you feel hollow because you have not really done what gave you satisfaction. You lived for somebody else's image, for somebody else's values, for somebody else's view of you which might have been fake and a pretense. This is one of the greatest reasons why you will find film actors, models going into severe depression, and some of them actually end up committing suicide. because they've been living a life which is hollow, meaningless, and empty by living always for something which is a pretense, which is a fake appearance. You keep building an appearance, you play with the appearance, you orchestrate the news media to promote an appearance. You come back home to what? What am I doing? What's the point of it? Ah, yes, of course, I became famous, I made the money, and then I'm miserable inside. Who will fill this hollow within me? And they don't have anybody. They have no means to fill. They have lost their way to such a degree. Not all. Some are actually meant to do that. If they come back home and they say, oh wow, I just did something so wonderful, and maybe they are famous or not is irrelevant. But many of them come back to this hollow because the whole thing they put up is a front, is a pretense. But if you fulfill in your direction, even if in the world's eyes you have failed or not attained to what they thought would be their markers of fame or wealth, you have done something so wonderful that you come back with deep satisfaction and joy and say, this was so worth it. I am so happy. I am so fulfilled. And then if your goal is not something temporary, superficial, bound to a particular form, like I want to be a pilot or I want to be this, which you can easily attain to, but you've set yourself a direction, then you can continue in your direction unendingly, and your direction itself can broaden and widen unendingly. Which means your life will be full of deep satisfaction, deep sense of fulfillment, deep sense of creativity, achievement, day to day, year to year, for as long as you choose. Now there are two caveats to this. Fine, let's say, requirements. One, not everybody has a single direction of life. Sometimes your life takes you through zigzag. You do this and then you do that and then you do the other, and you go through a zigzag mode. That's not a problem. As long as you're growing overall, broadly in a direction that is deeply, deeply fulfilling to you. Okay? So don't worry whether it's a straight line or a zigzag. Second caveat is that it's not always that you can set for your life a certain sense of broad direction simply and expect your work form to match that. Sometimes the two don't align easily. If, for example, your innate nature is to be of service, to help others, to be in engagement with people, in interaction, that interacting with them and helping them gives you that deep sense of purpose and satisfaction. You could be in medicine, you could be a nurse, you could be a doctor, you could be a PR person, you could be in the media in some form, you could be in various kinds of activities. You could just be a photographer as a career form, and still your focus would be this interaction in which you give this satisfaction. So the form is not necessarily aligned, but if you're clear about the direction, broad sense of activity that gives you the joy and fulfillment, it does not matter. You can even play with forms and change forms. On your CV, it may be confusing. You did so many different things. What's your real speciality? You say, my real speciality is that I love being with people and I love to make them feel happy and cared for. Maybe it could be as simple as that, isn't it? But how do you put that in a CV? How do you make that a career? It does not fit easily. You could be an artist and still this might be your primary drive. Even the artistry might be of a secondary drive. Or it may happen that there are many different forms which fit and you play with all of them. Or within you there is a multiple need. I love to be with people, but I also need to express myself through beauty. I need to express myself through some intelligent creativity. And there are perhaps one or two or three different needs of your nature. And it may lead to a pretty complex and sometimes a difficult kind of situation of life, because life is not so simple. Life is much more complex, and if you try to do more than one or two things, things can get complicated. But to you, that complexity and that complication actually gives you joy and enthusiasm. I had an example of a person who I know quite well. He was a chartered accountant, a man of tremendous intelligence and insight. And we were discussing this, and he said, I get bored with my work. And I asked him, is it the solving of problems which gives you joy, or the facing problems and grappling with them? And he says, no, it's the grappling with problems which gives joy. So it was not so much the knowledge aspect, it was the, let's say, the fighting instinct and the overcoming of a challenge which was his primary drive. And as a chartered accountant, there's not much scope for that. Although he had the intelligence, but he needed the intelligence because he lived in his mind to give him the satisfaction. So he needed a certain type of problem, and where he didn't find the problem, he would go out of his way, off track, even to create a problem or find something in order to be engaged meaningfully, you see. And all this is to bring us back to this one idea, that there has to be a broad sense of direction and purpose in your life, without which, the mother says, an aimless life is a miserable life, a life without joy. But the aim itself, you can make narrow, short, limited, short term, or you can aim at something which is really large, deep, vast, even something which you will never attain in your life. Doesn't matter. But the fact that you grow in the direction is your fulfillment, is your aim, so to say. So she makes this second observation, that depending on how high, how large, how complete is your aim, will be also the quality of your life. Because when your aim is too narrow, your sense of fulfillment is too narrow. And especially today, because in the changed circumstances that are available today because of access, wide, free access to so many things, we can do so much in many directions without being bound into a narrow track. I give an example here. I watched a movie once which was about heroism in a submarine. The whole movie takes place inside the submarine where they're fighting for something and they survive or not, that's not the point. Heroically, they're fighting for some purpose, defense of their country, challenges, overcoming. That 2 hours of the submarine movie, I came back from, and suddenly I realized I had actually acquired the essence of the life of a submariner. Going through the greatest crisis possible, growing through it, living through it, surviving through it, or perhaps dying through it, in cause of a higher ideal. And all the essence of that growth that the soul would have in that career has been actually condensed into that well-made movie. And to me, at least, that essence was enough. It's as if I had lived that life. So by a careful selection of the kinds of things you watch through cinema, through television, not wasting time in things which are too trivial, superficial, or dispersing, you can actually acquire, in a sense, the essence of many kinds of lives in a single lifetime. You don't have to live it all. Having acquired that much, you can say, yes, now I don't need to live the life of the submariner, but I could still benefit from that, and so on with other activities and career and experiences associated. So the benefits today actually are great because you can, as if condense, because of the complexity of opportunities, condense many lives worth of growth and learning into a very short, concentrated activity. But all this being available, what will be the broad direction of your life? And I'm going to give to our discussion the single highest and most important focus, in a way that it will transcend specifics of your particular individuality, your needs, your temperament, your nature. But we will touch upon some of that also in passing. The key point I will make to you in all that we discussed so far, you see, there's one word that keeps recurring: the sense of fulfillment, the sense of deep satisfaction that you have in what you do. If you ask yourself, would you rather have a life where everything you do is full of that deep satisfaction, or a life in which you're just dragging yourself meaninglessly without any satisfaction but attaining to specific goals? It's very obvious. You will not want that. You will want this deep satisfaction in what you do. Ideally, you would want whatever superficial goals you have and have the deep satisfaction aligned to it. But for the moment, let's just focus on the deep satisfaction. So, what gives you deep satisfaction? What makes you feel, yes, this was so good? At the end of the day, you can look back and say, wow, I have so much satisfaction. I've grown so much. I've benefited so much. I've done so much. Isn't it? What gives you that? Observe carefully. There's a very deep insight that you will gain here psychologically. Let's look at two different activities that you're going to meet. One, you go to a music concert or a lecture, and you come back from there and say, oh, this was so amazing, so interesting. You go to another music concert, lecture, whatever activity, you come back from it and you say, I'm so bored. I feel I wasted my time. Now observe carefully within you. I'm not specifying what the content of that was. Observe carefully within you what is different in these two cases. You go to this. You come back. You're full of, wow, so interesting, so useful. I didn't even feel time pass. It's finished too quickly. I wish it could have continued. On the other side, so boring. Time wasted. Time was so slow. When would it finish? I was waiting. What's the difference internally to you subjectively? And you discover something very important. In the case which was boring, you went, you came back. You went and you came back the same person. Nothing changed in you. In the other case, which is interesting, you went one person, you came back a different person. You had grown. You're not the same person who went in. Just that. That is your reference. Any activity where you experience a sense of growth is interesting. Any activity where you do not grow, where you remain exactly the same, you stagnate, is boring. A waste of time. Observe this, internalize this, because this is such a deep, profound insight. Think about it. What if your entire life could be such that every day you can say, wow, that was such an interesting day? Yes, maybe occasionally you accept there'll be days when you say you're bored, but the number of interesting will be far more than bored. What would it mean? It means every day you would, at the end of the day, be a different person because you have grown in between. Now, what will you do, or what can you do to make sure that growth takes place? Some days more, some days less, doesn't matter. Because even in growth, there are periods where you need to rest, to internalize, to assimilate. And we'll accept that. But what can you do to ensure that in your day there is growth? And then you can say, my God, my life is so interesting. I don't have enough time. If days are passing too fast. I wish I had much more time to do so much more. Or in contrast with the life where you say, oh my God, the days are so heavy, they are so slow, my life is dragging on and dragging on aimlessly, meaninglessly. We don't want that boring life where you're stagnant. We choose a life of rapid growth. But get this point. Growth equals interesting. And the two are equivalent. If you find something interesting, it's because there is growth. When there is growth, it will always be interesting. Now, there's a caveat again, a small correction you have to make as you go along. You went to a entertainment space, let's say, some kind of party, some kind of social interaction, or some kind of a novelty, some theme park, entertainment park. You went there and came back, oh, that was so much fun. Great, because you grew. You go a second day. You come back, yeah, that was fun, but some of it is already boring. You go third day, fourth day, fifth day. At some point you'll come back and say, been there, done that, enough of it, I don't want to go again. Why? Because that space can only give you so much growth. So the first day you made, let's say, 20% of the growth potential it had. The second day you made 10% of the growth potential, and each time less and less until you kind of saturated with what that space could give you. You see? There's nothing wrong with the space. The space is only useful for this much. And this is the same case with certain types of books, certain types of teachers, certain types of subjects, certain types of people. There's only so much potential. They can take you from here to there. After that, well, okay, you have to move on to something else. And the same is true for certain types of careers also. And so if you have a specially developed growth potential, you might actually end up jumping careers, taking each to its full and then jumping. That's why I said sometimes it's a zigzag path. But because your potential is that much greater. Sometimes it's a multifaceted path. You're doing 2 or 3 things at the same time because your growth potential is more rich. It's not the case for everybody, but observe yourself, and each one of us, we are unique. But relate it now to the growth potential and the domains of activity and subjects, spaces, etc. And there you begin to get a glimpse of what would it mean to have a sense of purpose, of direction of life. Now, I'm looking at it in a most general way without specifying forms of activity. You find your own, and if necessary, zigzag. One of the things I tell people, and I will say this to you, that if you can afford it, till the age of 25, do not narrow your scope into a fixed career path. Now, some of you may already be slotted into some kind of career path because of parents or because of circumstances of life, because there's a family business, or you yourself have a very specific line and you're happy with the narrowness of that line. Maybe, that's fine. But for most of us, as will be the case, you want to diversify and widen your capacities as richly and widely as possible, especially at this age when you can. Because your body is growing, your mind is growing, even your biological brain is growing. Till the age of about 21, your brain is continuing to grow as well as your body. And during the period when it is growing, you can actually make it as flexible and wide and rich in capacity as possible. And the more broad your base you create, the wider will be the base for the enrichment of life afterwards. And therefore for your life to be interesting, fascinating, conquering, achieving, realizing every possibility that you could choose to. I'm leaving it at the most general level. If your base now is narrow, because the only thing you did was just this much, just to pass my exam, you come through with a narrow base, and then when you hit life, you realize life demands so much more. See, one of the things I will say to you, and which might upset some of your parents, but I don't think it will upset the teachers here, they will agree with me, is I will say to you, the exam actually does not matter. How well you do in an exam does not matter for life. Because if I were to hire you, the exam marks actually tell me nothing about you. They just tell me that in a group of so many people, you were able to memorize better than others to get a higher number of marks for memory. What kind of a person are you? Will I like you? Can I trust you? Are you creative? Will you fit in my environment with my team? Can I rely upon you? Can I give you an assignment and expect that you will deliver, come what may? And in a mission critical assignment, it's a do or die. Can I really put my life in your hands? This will be the question that would be asked by somebody who's really doing something worthwhile, that you would want to join perhaps. And the exam tells me nothing about this. You understand? In fact, in many cases, those who are very high performers in exam, they are not very effective in life because they narrowed themselves too much. I say in many cases. But if you don't make that mistake, yes, you do your exams, get what is the exam finally giving you is a paper that tells you so many marks. That's only like an entry point to get to an interview. And then even what is it the interview is looking for? So Elon Musk, for example, has a standard question which he asks everybody. And we can tell you what the question is. You can come prepared for it. It will mean nothing. Because he will assess you, or I would assess you on the basis of that question. And the question is very simple. Describe to me the most difficult problem you faced in life and how you solved it. You can make up a story and we would see through it. But if you've actually done something, and overcome it and achieved something. In overcoming, the enthusiasm you will have, the kind of details you will share, you can't make that up. And in that narration and through a few questions, I would assess what kind of a person you are and whether you meet the requirement for my team. Isn't it? You see how simple it is. And I don't need all those exams. Yes, that exam will tell me that you actually specialized in a particular technical area that I need a special specialization for. But I have 1,000 people who have the same kind of specialization. How do I decide? And there it's not your number. It's not because your mark was 96.3 and somebody else was 96.2 or even 90 that the person is less capable or less suitable for what I'm looking for. And sometimes somebody who's an 85 might be better suited because they're creative, they're innovative, they are adaptable, they're flexible, they learn fast. Those are the skills I need. So yes, please do prepare for your exams, do all that's necessary, but don't make that your goal in life now. Your goal should be to make your base as broad as possible so that the larger goal of life you can have as fulfilling, as enjoyable, as rich, creative, complete in whatever way you choose and you need, when you need, as possible. Okay, you would agree with me so far? So when you come back to that question of discovering the aim of life, I've still not told you anything about that, but I've told you how important it is and why it should be something so broad and what is the psychological principle upon which it should be based: learning, growth, creativity, etc. But as wide as possible. So I would even recommend for you, there are these things they call hobbies. No, they are not hobbies, they are essential. Please take up different activities. So if it interests you, if you are musically minded, learn to play a musical instrument. But not with the idea of being a career. Mostly your parents will say, but you're not good at that. You have career counselors. They say you're not good at this, don't do this. You're good at that, do that, that's the career you go to. Please don't make that mistake. Develop your skills, capacities and enthusiasm and plasticity and richness of capacity to learn and all the faculties of your nature, of your personality. For that, it does not matter whether you are good at it. The fact that you do it and you enjoy doing it, that's your reference. So take a musical instrument, learn to play it for a month, for 2 months, 3 months. Maybe after that you reach a saturation level where you say, okay, that's about it. I can't go further beyond this or I don't want to. Fine, switch to some other activity. Now take up a sporting activity. Play a certain skill-based game, table tennis or whatever it is. 1, 2, 3, 4 months. If you enjoyed, take it a little further. Eventually, if you reach a saturation point, fine. Now you switch to something else. Work with pottery, clay, molding, shaping. Switch to something else. Go to making electronics, hobby kits, make a radio, make a transmitter, go into digital electronics, get into programming, do all kinds of different activities, each challenging you and developing you in a different way in multiple directions. Learn to say jokes and develop the skill of becoming humorous when you need to. It's not easy. Some people have it spontaneously. You can say, this person could be in that career even. They're so skilled spontaneously. But can you say a joke and make people laugh? And most of us, when we tell a joke, we start laughing and we expect others to laugh. Nobody laughs. What did I do wrong? I don't know. Develop the skill. Why not? It's not that you're going to make a career out of it. You're going to develop facets, skills, capacities of your personality. This should be your primary effort. Develop yourself as much as possible at this age, and generally I say up to the age of 25. Well, for whatever reason, if you need to specialize before, that's a choice you will make, but as much as possible. At the very least, music, some form of art of painting, some kind of technical development. It could be programming, it could be something as easy or as difficult as you like, but which develops your rational intellectual capacities, and some kind of interpersonal engagement where you are there to help people without bothering about yourself. at least one of these, more of these, all of these, maybe some physical, purely body skills like basketball, football, table tennis. Something of each of these, at least to diversify the spread of your personality and its skills and capacities, is essential. And you have the time at this point as a student. You have the time. Do it, give yourself the time and develop, make as broad a base as possible. When I was a student in the ashram school, of course, we had in the Sri Aurobindo ashram many of these so-called extracurricular activities as part of our curriculum, but we had many options. So among others, I took up playing the tabla, playing the sitar. 2 years I did the Kathak dance and various other things. But the point was to expose and broaden and plastify the personality. Because the future increasingly will demand from you that plasticity, creativity and ability to learn. I'm going to go out on a limb a bit, but I'm going to say this to you in a bit of a sharp way. Almost everything you learn today in school, you will find to be unnecessary in life. Because anything that you can be taught here through this rote method of learning is taught to AI, artificial intelligence, and can do it better than you. I made this statement to a group of management students who had just completed with their highest ranks, and that all the 200 of them had won awards. And I said to them, all that you've been taught for the purpose for which you've been given all these awards actually means nothing, because artificial intelligence can do the same thing better than you can. Does that mean you'll give up everything and go to sleep and replace yourself with the AI? No. There are two important takeaways from this. First, that what is your worth, which no artificial intelligence can replace? That is the most important thing. Develop that. And it covers everything that we discussed so far, but much more. And a key element of that is creativity. The ability to look at a situation, penetrate with insight, seize upon an insight, and then act based upon it to achieve something which has never been done before. And because it has never been done before, AI cannot do it. It can only repeat what it has learned from observing you or from observing your course content. So your potential for creativity, your adaptability, plasticity, and ability to receive inspiration and execute things which have never been done before, to acquire knowledge which has never been had before, that is going to be your future skill. That makes you useful in the future, in that sense, in the market. But more importantly, the other aspect is you are learning all this not in order to be able to compete with artificial intelligence, which will beat you at it. You are learning all this in order to build yourself and your capacity. Understand why you're coming to school. School is intended to develop the faculties and capacities of your personality, so that you can be a full flowering person with all your petals fully opened and engage with life fully, with the full scope of your capacities. That is the objective of school training, or should be. It's not in most cases. Your school is perhaps an exception, but it's not in most cases. But the only thing they make you do is learn by heart, which AI can do within a few seconds what you take years to learn. So what are you learning for in order to develop yourself? Focus on that and develop yourself as much as you can, as widely and richly as you can. That will be something worthwhile, because now when you engage with life, you are ready fully, with the full spread of your capacities. And especially when you find there's an activity which you're bad at, that's when I will say, please take that up and overcome the weakness that you have associated with that activity, so that you may be a more complete person. And this you can do at this age, when your body is growing and your mind is growing and everything is easier to do. After a certain age, let's say after 21, sometimes after 25, a lot of these things begin to narrow down. And at that point, to do things which you're not good at is much more difficult. So spread yourself out, flowering like a flower with all the petals. And sometimes petals have to be layered. The outer petals have to open first before the inner petals can open, isn't it? So there's a layering in the process. And it is a very natural instinct within you that teaches you how to do this by showing you exactly what is interesting. When you do something and you say it's interesting, you're growing. Follow your interest. But there's a superficial interest and a deeper interest. Persist with the deeper interest. And superficial interest can come and go, no problem. But persist with this. Use this as your driving mode. Let all your learning be because it gives you the joy of learning. Or find the joy in it. And there are ways to do that. Sometimes the textbook is boring. That's because the writer was not very good of the textbook. Or the teacher is not very good at how to convey. Irrespective. Today you have the tools on the internet through various kinds of channels, YouTube, etc., where you will find a better teacher who will teach you the same thing in a way that makes it more interesting, more insightful. Or yourself look for the deeper insight that's missing, because of which it seems to be boring, and make for the interest which you're lacking. There are many ways to handle this. But your effort should be now to develop yourself. Now we come to a key idea. If you really want to live a life which will be for you the most fulfilling, and I don't care about the forms and directions at this point, but you want it to be as fulfilling as possible. If you really want to do that, the first requirement is for you to be able to grow. But in order to be able to grow, you must know yourself. What are the parts within you that have to grow? In what directions they can grow? What is their potential? What is their place? What is the layer within you that experiences this joy and enthusiasm? What is the layer in you which becomes very quiet, stands back from the excitation, and makes a very clear, calm, cool assessment? And there are different layers, and you need both, isn't it? So broadly speaking, and in a very general way, we can say there are 4 parts to our personality. There's your mind, which is your intelligence, but again there are many layers there. There are your emotions and life energies and enthusiasm of your vital forces, and without that you can do nothing, and you want that. And then there's this body, which is the base holding it all together. If that falls sick, then of course you can do nothing. Even your mind can get knocked out if your body is harmed. So you want all 3 to be fully, richly developed. But who is the person that's living this? And we will use the word here in its true spiritual sense, the soul, as the person who chose to take birth. And I'll touch upon this in a very brief way. Although you do not remember now here in your mind, you chose to take birth. And in most cases, we choose the environment of our family and sometimes even our parents for a reason. What it is not always obvious. And that's a longer discussion, perhaps another time. But you chose to enter because of a certain combination of possibilities that this offered for your growth. And therefore, your life came with an intention and a purpose and a direction that's already known deep within you. And when you come to that center, what is interesting, in the deepest soul, or the word Sri Aurobindo uses is the psychic being to distinguish from the superficial soul, emotional souls, etc. In your deepest spiritual center, we are conscious of all of our prior lives and the continuity of our effort of growth and learning and evolution, and even have a sense of the direction for the future that we want to grow towards. We know ourselves immortal. And this is just one of so many lives that we have been through. And sometimes even a vague memory of the fact that you have been alive before is enough to free you from the illusion that, oh, I'm just this body. It's enough to free you from the superficial sense of relationships, likes and dislikes. You know what? We have all had, all of us without exception, we have all had through many lives various kinds of struggles, adventures, difficulties, sometimes extremely painful, sometimes extremely joyous. We've all been through difficulties where we had to look after our families. We have all had families. Many parents, many children, brothers, sisters, communities, fought for, died for, helped, served, everything we have done many times already. And just the fact that you become conscious of all this frees you from the need to repeat the same thing again and again. And the reason why we repeat is because we have forgotten here. And you say, oh, but this is so important, as if you have never had it before. And automatically, many superficial attachments tend to fade out. once the memory comes back. Oh, I've done it so many times, isn't it? What is important now? And from the deeper poise within you, and I don't mean you need to know your soul for that, just become very still and quiet and center as deep as you can within you and look at your life and say, what is important now? And you'll find certain things which feel more important and certain things which feel more superficial. Certain things are transitory. That's okay, it'll pass, it's not so important. That is lasting, that is real, that will matter after 20 years. There's automatically a prioritization from taking a poise like this. I'm going to put it in different words, and I hope it's not too hard for you, but sometimes it helps to look at it in this way. There's a lady I used to know in Auroville. One day she came to me and said, I've just been diagnosed with such and such a cancer, and the doctors have given me 3 months to live. Now imagine what that would do to her. Well, what would it do to you if someone said to you, well, this is it, you have 3 more months? What she said was, I look back at my life, and she had lived, 40 years, 50 years. She said, everything I did there was for the wrong reasons. I never did the things which were for me the single most important things. For my soul, for my nourishment, what was for me important, I neglected all that. And now I'm doing just that. And she gave me a list of things which she was doing, which were for her the true nourishment that she wanted for herself, for her souls, for her aspiration. And in 3 months she left. But if you had 3 months, or make it shorter, if you have 1 week, what would you consider important in your life? And what would you want to do which would be for you worthwhile to do for that 1 week or those 3 months? Just think about it. Because it will help to sift out the things which are trivial. Because very often you will experience a certain stress that comes from the demands of peer pressure, demands of your school pressure, demands from your parental pressure, and maybe some friend has suddenly told you, I will not talk to you again for the rest of my life, and you go into deep depression. When you look at things from a deeper perspective, you say, no, that's not true. That's not how it's going to be. You can stop talking now. But if there's something real, a true friendship, we will meet, we will talk, we will come back together. This is a superficial, frivolous misunderstanding. I don't need to be depressed. You understand? And then there are things which are so important. And those, when you stick to, you feel worthwhile. Those, when you compromise, you feel deep pain. For example, one of the deepest instincts within us is not to tell a lie. And it's not just about superficial truth of speech, it's about doing what's right. When you know something is right and you don't compromise on that, even at great cost of suffering, you feel a deep sense of satisfaction and a strength. But when you compromise those things, and you loosely, casually tell a lie, hurt somebody, somewhere deep inside it hurts you. And that hurt stays after years. You look back at that one event and say, why was I so mean and so nasty? And if I had that 1 week left, I would first go to that person and say, I'm so sorry I was harsh with you. I didn't mean to be. It was just a moment's stupidity. But what would you do now? Which is for you important? Which would be for you, if you had 1 week to live, so important that everything else you could drop? Look at those things and start doing those things. Start giving importance to those things. And in this way, from deep within you, from your own deepest soul, of which you're not fully conscious, but it is conscious of you, from your deepest soul, there is an influence that will grow and which will become the reference for you more and more. When I do these things, I feel deeply unhappy and pained. I feel it is false. It's not true within me. I stop doing those things because I feel the difference. And more you will organize your thoughts, your emotions, your activities, your life, your expression, the words you use, the way you engage with people, the value you give to things around that, which is really you, the one who chose to take birth. And the more you're able to do this, and the earlier you're able to do this, the more you will find within you the strength to take you through life despite whatever circumstances and challenges. And remember, life is not going to be that 1 week or 1 month or even 1 year or 10 years. Your life is eternal. Because even when you complete this biology's life, you are going to come back and continue whatever you choose to continue to do, whatever is important for you. So even though we will prioritize using the reference of a shorter time, our perspective is for what is for you worthwhile to do for the next 1,000 years. Think about it. It's not just for this life. What are the values which will be meaningful 100 years, 1,000 years from now? What can you create that is going to be of worth 1,000 years from now? That's what we call real art, isn't it? The thing which survived time. You go to a masterful sculpture or painting or even a poem or a piece of music. It's masterful because although it was created whenever it was, 100 years, 200 years, 1,000 years, 10,000 years ago, you look at it today and you say, wow. It has transcended the limitation of time and the change of values and the evolution of human beings and their changing standards. It's something as if like a piece of eternity captured in form. To create something like that, you'll say, wow, that's worth doing, isn't it? So there are values which come spontaneously and they're all within you. You don't have to imitate others or be like others. Be yourself. Be truly yourself. And for that you need to know yourself more and more. And that itself is a process you should start now. And it means giving yourself time. It means observing yourself, observing your thoughts, observing your emotions, observing your actions, observing your instincts, your drives, your passions. And then through observation, as you become more conscious, organizing them around more and more what is true within you, what is real, what is lasting. And you can feel that. You don't have words, don't worry. You feel it, you know it. And what you know is the beginning. There's something much more deep, much more complete, much more true, more and more that will come forward as you become aware. And at the same time, as you are this individual and you're organizing your whole thoughts, emotions, actions around this true center, and you're developing your skills and capacities of your nature and the flexibility and adaptability of your nature, because that's what your future is going to demand from you, to be able to do whatever comes your way, isn't it? That would be, you're growing towards mastery. I say true mastery is when you can be put into any situation and you can make the most of it, whatever field the mastery is. And you want growing in that direction. That's a worthwhile direction, sense of purpose and aim for your life, isn't it? Again, irrespective of the specifics of your nature and your temperament. I'm not going to that. It's not going to be important for our discussion. I'm showing you the broad approach. Get this clear, the rest will fall into place. And there are things you will do which you cannot imagine now. Because technology is changing, the world is changing, AI is improving and eliminating so much of the drudgery. What will be the world like 10 years from now? We cannot even imagine. So don't try to prepare yourself for a world 10 years from now, because it's a pointless exercise. Prepare yourself for your own self-fulfillment, to be as capable as you can be, richly, fully equipped for the joy of growth and learning, and plastic and adaptable, creative. Then you can be thrown into any situation, you'll make the most of it at each step. And your life will be really, really, really interesting. So interesting, you'll look back and say, wow, this was worth it. This was one of the best lives I've had, because at the time of exit from the body, you actually look back not just to this life, you also know your past lives. You say, yeah, this was good. I made good use of it, and you prepare for the next, because it's one life. It's eternal. Okay? So I'm giving you a very broad sense. But for that, you're going to become plastic, rich, capable in every way. And remember, you're not competing with others. That's meaningless. You want to compete with others? I'll show you a trick to become first. Just like that, without any special preparation. Go and sit for the exam for the previous class. You're in class 9, go and sit for an exam for class 8. Okay, if that's difficult, go for class 7, class 6, class 5. You'll come first. What's the use? What's the point? There's no point competing with others. At best, you use competition as an impetus to do better for yourself. That person achieved it in 20 minutes. I should be able to do that in 20 minutes. That's not competition, that's inspiration. You look at someone who's done better, you say, wow, it's possible humanly to do this. I should be able to do it. Let me try. And maybe I don't hit 20 minutes, I do it in 25 minutes. And it gives me satisfaction, that's good. But earlier I thought I couldn't do more in even after 1 hour, and now I can do 25 minutes. I have just beaten my own record. You understand? So competition, if anything, is with yourself. But I dislike even that word. Because in fact, in reality, in life, it's always collaborative action which leads to the breakthroughs. It's not competitive action. It's not destructive competition, it's collaborative innovation. What Elon Musk has built is with collaborative innovation, not by competitive destruction. So, and that they never teach you in school. So I'm deliberately shifting you out from certain ways of thinking and showing you a different way of approaching. You're competing with yourself, if anything, but even that I would discard the word. You're growing and improving yourself. And use the reference of others because it shows you actually it's possible to do better. Okay. But in certain cases you might say, okay, beyond this it's not even worth it for me to spend more time. I would rather put that time in developing something else. That choice you make. But in this broad, rich growth that you have, where you're fulfilling more and more what is true within you, we're coming to the last point. The higher the goal, the wider the vision you have, the more rich and fulfilling your life. And the greatest satisfaction is when you serve something which is beyond conception, when you serve a higher divine potential, for which I will leave you with two indications. First, the best that you can do with your mind fully trained, with your emotions and life energy is fully developed, organized and mastered, with your body perfected, plastic, supple, skillful and effective, and your soul giving the broad sense of purpose and direction. The best that you can do is still limited. There is a potential above mind, and that's why we will call it spiritual, of the nature of the spirit. And the first opening above mind is this zone which we will call intuition, where all knowledge is available. In one of the great Upanishads in India, this young student goes, he's the son of a rishi, he goes and studies, comes back with the mastery of so many arts and skills, and then his rishi father asks him, have they taught you that by knowing which you will know everything? And the student is surprised. Is there such a thing? By knowing this I can know everything. Wow. And the Upanishad proceeds then to teach that. So there is actually within you, above you, as a part of your own higher consciousness, a domain where all knowledge is available, all skill, all power, all things which you're struggling to develop here are already present there as a potential. And if you can become very quiet and open to that, and as if draw down or receive a flow of the intuition, it literally flows through you and flows through a series of ideas, gives you a certain impetus of force, and even in your action through your fingers, hands, body can be precisely perfect, effortlessly. And this is not something fanciful. This is what you're taught in the Olympic gymnasts. In the Olympic gymnasts are taught this. In management schools of a very advanced kind, they speak about this as the condition called flow. But they speak of it as something which happens once in a while. What I'm telling you is you can make it happen consciously whenever you choose. And this is the power of this spiritual training, which opens you to this higher consciousness and allows you then to literally let it flow through you. And you've all had experiences where you've written a poem, where you had to construct by struggle a poem, or when it just flowed through and it came and it was perfect. And you almost did nothing except transcribe it. You've all had experiences where in the middle of a game, while you were running or doing throwing a shot or swinging a bat or a racket or something, or you're throwing the ball, suddenly your body felt as if in tune, they call it in the zone, and you knew it would be a perfect shot even before you completed it, and the basketball went perfectly into the basket. It happens in moments, and we don't know why, we don't know how. And we could stop there, or we will say, but I have a knowledge of how I can make it happen whenever I choose to. And you can train yourself, this developed capacity of your consciousness, your personality centered in your deeper soul aspiration, can now open to this higher potential, and through it things will flow through you that have never been created on earth, and each time unique. And in the flow you'll find you actually have to do nothing. It happens smoothly, effortlessly, because you're skilled and receptive and plastic to that influence. If there's a high inspiration but your body is rigid, your mind is clogged and confused and narrow and limited, it can't do much. But if you've built this base and plastic and rich and wide and open, which was the whole first part of our discussion, then what comes from above can just flow and freely act, and you can achieve extraordinary miracles, masterpieces, chef-d'oeuvre as they say in French. Things which have lasting real value, or in that moment it's perfect, it's beautiful, and it gives you deep satisfaction, and it expresses something so wonderful. Everybody feels that deep satisfaction momentarily, and maybe it passes, doesn't matter. But to bring that, to manifest that, to create that is the second thing which gives you deepest satisfaction. Remember, the first thing I spoke of was growing, learning, evolving. That gives you satisfaction. The other is manifesting something which is true and beautiful, but of a higher realm or grade of consciousness, flowing and expressing through you, creating. So growing and creating, these are the two things which give you true, deep, lasting satisfaction. So the second movement also you should work upon. But the more this first part is developed, the more easy and more fulfilling, more complete the second will be. But that also you can start to do even now. And the basic training for that is to make yourself very quiet, very still, very receptive and open to receive from above. And you'll feel the inspiration filling you, inspiring you, carrying you. So this is the point I want to make. And the second point for that, which will also set the direction of your life, is when you live for yourself, you are too small a unit. And whatever you may do, however wonderful it may be, the satisfaction will be limited by the size of you or the size of your influence. When you live for something greater and larger than yourself, your satisfaction also now fills a vessel which is as large. Think about it. The reason why the soldier on the border is ready to give up his life, because he lives for the love of his country, which includes you and I, whom he will never meet. But because he lives for Mother India, because the goal is so large, the satisfaction he has even in when his life is taken in that sacrifice, the impact, the fullness of that is as large as all of us and includes all of us, and that's why it moves us. But for him, it's not, I didn't die meaninglessly. I gave my life for a cause which is so grand, so great, so wonderful. And he will take birth again with that deep satisfaction of having had a useful life, but now to make it more useful in other ways perhaps. So the point I'm making is, as large is the scope of your goal to which you commit yourself, that large is the vessel of your satisfaction. And so I'm going to suggest to you, and this is something which is very important, you can of course conceive of serving the divine, which is the largest goal. But maybe right now for you that is something too vast or too abstract. You can serve humanity, but that's again something you don't really know what is this humanity. But there is something you do know, and that is serve Mother India, Bharat Mata. And Mother India is the Divine Mother, is the Mother who creates the universes. She is also Mother Earth, but a special aspect of her which is Mother India, where a special knowledge, and this knowledge of all the things we are discussing, which I will call a spiritual knowledge, has been gathered, preserved, developed and kept across millennia, thousands of years. Nowhere else on earth it's been preserved and developed like this. And although there's a lot of mixture and confusion in all this, what passes under spirituality, everywhere today there's confusion. Still, the body of knowledge and the particular methods and approaches by which you can attain to your deepest satisfaction and perfection, and for the whole nation to rise and wake up, and for all humanity to grow, that knowledge is preserved and is transmitted. And what we're sharing is just a tiny part of that here. But a part that should be for you applicable and real now as you are today. But which will also be applicable through the rest of your life. It's not knowledge which will ever become old. Because the same thing, the same discussion, you can have 10 years from now, it will be as valuable, even though you'll be a different person. You'll have it 30 years from now, it'll be as valuable, even though you'll be a different person. That's why it's eternal knowledge, it's lasting. And this is spiritual knowledge. That's why we call it Vidya. So this Mother India is the Divine Mother, and when you turn to her in service to her, the satisfaction you have is that much larger. In fact, with Mother India, you're also touching Mother Earth and the Divine Mother. So although this is an accessible frame to which you serve, it opens you to something which is infinite. And so my last suggestion will be this, that you set as your goal in your development, for what are you doing all this? Yes, for yourself, but that's too small a vessel. Your own growth you dedicate to the larger fulfillment of Mother India and her awakening and her mission in the world. And with that is the centuries and aeonic cycles of human evolution and the whole of the universe, because in your lifetime we will come to know of other species from other planets and other beings. They too have their own spiritual lives. They also are like us, they grow like us, they go through the same difficulties. In your lifetime we will have this interaction, it will take place very soon. And you will realize that the whole universe is home for the children of the Divine Mother that we all are as beings. And your fulfillment of your life will serve this large evolution of all humanity, but also of all the universe. And I'm going to read from a passage of Sri Aurobindo. It's a message he gave to students of the Baroda College, the National College, when they completed their Bengal National College, when they completed their education. And I'll read from there. He says, when we established this college, and you think of this now for Jaipuria School when you read this, when we established this college and left other occupation, other chances of life, to devote our lives to this institution, we did so because we hoped to see in it the foundation, the nucleus of a nation, of the new India, which is to begin its career after this night of sorrow and trouble. On that day of glory and greatness when India will work for the world. Remember, Sri Aurobindo wrote this more than 100 years ago. Today we are seeing the beginnings of this, of India working for the glory of the world. We are beginning to see this. And in your lifetimes you will have the privilege to see this and have the privilege of participating in this. So I continue with the text. On that day of glory and greatness when India will work for the world. What we want here is not merely to give you a little information, not merely to open to you careers for earning a livelihood, but to build up sons for the motherland to work and to suffer for her. That is why we started this college, and that is the work to which I want you to devote yourselves in future. Then he writes, what has been insufficiently and imperfectly begun by us, it is for you to complete and lead to perfection. When I come back, Sri Aurobindo writes, and take it as his words to you, I wish to see some of you becoming rich, rich not for yourselves, but that you may enrich the mother with your riches. I wish to see some of you becoming great, great not for your own sakes, not that you may satisfy your own vanity, but great for her, to make India great, to enable her to stand up with head erect among the nations of the earth, as she did in days of yore when the world looked up to her for light. Even those who will remain poor and obscure, I want to see their very poverty and obscurity devoted to the motherland. Think about this. Even if you are in a situation of difficulty of some kind, dedicate that to the Divine Mother, to Mother India. There are times in a nation's history when Providence places before it one work, one aim, to which everything else, however high and noble in itself, has to be sacrificed. Such a time has now arrived for our motherland, when nothing is dearer than her service, when everything else is to be directed to that end. If you will study, study for her sake. Train yourselves, body and mind and soul, for her service. You will earn your living that you may live for her sake. You will go abroad to foreign lands that you may bring back knowledge with which you may do service to her. Work that she may prosper. Suffer that she may rejoice. All is contained in that one single advice. So I pause here from the text that Sri Aurobindo wrote, because this is the broad sense of the vision for what you dedicate your lives. What you work for yourself, what you grow into, we have discussed. What you dedicate it to is this much larger vision and cause. And through India, through her awakening, through her growth and leadership, you will serve the world. And you will serve all that lives, all that exists in the whole universe. So this is the broad sense that I want to give to the theme that we have set, discovering the aim of life. I have not gone into specifics of forms, though that was indicated right at the beginning. But I've kept this broad sense of purpose and what you need to do to make this possible and effective. I've tried to make it very practical, though, with all the pointers I've given of the things you can do and you should do, without limiting it in any way. So I would suggest for those of you who like, you may want to rehear this a few times to fully embody, and perhaps 10 years from now hear it once again, and you'll find it will make even more sense, because you will have understood yourself better and your life and the world even better. Thank you. That is all I want to share today.
Thank you so much.
Namaste. And I don't know if we have time for questions, but what I would like, if we don't have questions, then we will close with a short concentration. If you would like to end now, I'll leave it to you. I cannot hear. The voice is muted.
Vande Mataram, sir. Sir, my
Vande
question
Mataram.
is that you've said that we need to diversify.
Yes, go on.
Sir, am I audible?
Yes.
Sir, I'm Saransh Mishra from class 12th E. My question is that, sir, you said we need to diversify our horizon and we need to gather skills from different fields, at least till the age of 25. You mentioned so. But we also hear the jack of all trades but master of none. So it's also said, another question which I have is that why is it needed to have many skills? How does it affect us and why do we need to do so?
Yes. So this business of jack of all trades is a nice saying, but it's not always true. The idea there was that you don't just develop superficial skills of many kinds, but develop specializations or mastery in some field. But this is okay in the Western context. Sri Aurobindo points out in the very nature of the Indian genius, it was always a multiple mastery. And mastery, yes, but mastery need not be narrow and limited. In fact, the reality of the future is increasingly that knowledge we discover is one continuum. So any narrow specialization is limited by the narrowness of the specialization. The greatest breakthroughs today are in what we call interdisciplinary fields. As long as you have 10 people with specializations in 10, they will all collide and they'll always be in contradiction. But somebody who has mastery in multiple fields and then a general knowledge beyond that of everything else can actually unify and overcome those differences, build bridges and make the breakthroughs in the gaps which have been ignored by the specializations. So the way forward in the future is actually a unification of knowledge and a mastery in the unification. While it may be specialized in a particular field, it must then widen out in a continuum to the whole field of knowledge, leaving out nothing. Such should be, ideally, the direction of your training and development. Maybe you cannot take it all that way, but take it as far as you can in that direction. Remember, I'm setting a direction. You may not achieve in this life. It will take you 10 lives, no problem. But you'll have the satisfaction all through those 10 lives. Does that make sense practically? Why you need to have multidisciplinary, large scope? All the breakthroughs in the future are in multidisciplinary fields.
Sir, so your point of view related to the future is quite clear to me. But what's the spiritual point of view to it? How will it impact me if I am mastering in many fields and many skills?
The spiritual perspective is this: all that can be described and defined by algorithms and book written knowledge can be replaced by artificial intelligence. The future, therefore, for human action is to open to the higher spiritual potential and the intuitive powers which can make breakthroughs which cannot be replicated, imitated, or replaced by machine learning. So in that sense, the future leaders will be those who open to intuition, and that's why you must develop this. Does that make sense?
So how are these modes related to the intuitive perspective?
The intuition is precisely that domain. And to be able to open to that consciously and draw upon it, to develop insights, to inspire yourself in action, to be able to even to attain skills through the intuitive action in the hands, in the body. All of this will be part of the training if you really want to be future proof. Otherwise, eventually you will outgrow the need of the hour. You will become a has-been, and you'll have to change your body, take a new life, take a new body which will be more skilled and receptive to the new necessities, and build again a new life. But ideally, and this is what I recommend, in this very life you should have many rebirths. Each time rebuilding yourself, reshaping yourself in demand of what is needed today.
And sir, each time we learn a new thing, can we say that a new part of ourselves grows?
Absolutely. Absolutely. You're never learning things. Remember, the word itself is wrong. You're not learning from outside. You're discovering from within you. Even as you learn from outside, effectively you awaken to a skill and capacity of knowledge or of execution which is drawn out from within you. So always learning is accompanied by growth. That's why it is interesting. If mere acquisition of knowledge was from outside, there would be no growth to you. It would never be interesting. That's what the machine learning does. What you do when you acquire knowledge is to discover what was already known within you, and you grow with it. Therefore, it's interesting.
Thank you. So just one more question. In the starting, you mentioned that there is a particular thing, there is a particular calling which comes from inside, which we need to follow, and it is there from the starting, if you are quite conscious enough. So, sir, I have a doubt here that how can we differentiate that whether it is a calling from our inmost being to do a particular thing, or it is just a social obligation or a social influence which is there upon us. I'll give an
Yes.
example. If a person says that I like cricket and I want to be a cricketer, so the chances is that he's influenced by the society, because he'll never say I like to be an ice hockey player, because that's not the climatic conditions of India. So he's been influenced by the society. So how can we differentiate that whether that calling is coming from inside or we are just affected?
So very clearly, the calling from within will rarely be bound to an external form. It will never be, I want to be ice hockey player or football player. In very rare cases, it may take that direction, but generally it will be that I enjoy the skill of engagement in these full body games. That will be the direction, and then it will fit into the grooves of the available games that you can access. And then later it may take a more specialized form as it grows into a career. But innate to it all will be the body, strength, skill, growth in a rich team frame. That will be the broad direction. So always what comes from within is not bound to form. It's like water. It can flow to fill any form. It's the quality of the water and the direction it flows which will be different. So, and let me, since you mentioned cricket, I would very highly recommend for all of you, please do not waste your life in cricket. Cricket is one of the most stupid, meaningless games because at any given time, half the team is sitting waiting for a chance and only two people are on the field bowling and batting. Everybody else on the other team is also sitting and waiting for the ball to come their way. And the action is of two people for a few seconds at a time with a lot of time wasted. You are learning nothing. The skill base is practically zero requirement. It's one of the most wasteful games of national energy. Redirect the same energy in learning basketball, football, or other team games where everybody is simultaneously engaged and there's a constant team interaction. What you will learn from basketball play in half an hour will be more than several hours of cricket where you will still have learned nothing useful because, well, you don't have a chance to do anything useful there. So unfortunately, it has been pushed upon you by the media and the drama with a lot of other interests involved. But it's one of the most meaningless somnambulistic games where you're just sitting as a zombie or standing as a zombie most of the time. Play basketball. As a team game, you'll see how quickly you will develop interpersonal skills. You'll develop mastery of your emotions and energies as well as physical skills. So yes, there are games which even at your age will be helpful and useful, irrespective of whether it's part of your soul's deepest calling. It includes all these because the soul delights when you grow in your skills and capacities. So don't think of the soul's direction as being narrow to a specific form. It's much more broad generally for a wide, rich growth, of which these can be done, and please enjoy those when you do them.
Thank you so much, sir.
Vande Mataram, sir. My name is
Vande
Arna
Mataram.
Srivastav. I'm from class 8E, and my question was that is it wrong to decide what we want to do or become from a young age?
No, it's not wrong. Understand that whatever you feel drawn to is a reference and a direction. Don't fixate yourself into the narrow groove because right now you don't have a full picture of what the world is like. Keep it as a direction. Understand that what you're called to is something deeper behind the form. That's why I gave you that example of my friend and the police. Yes, that form attracts you, but you will learn as you grow that it's not the form but something which is the quality of action or work in that form which is what calls you. And you will discover that quality in a wider sphere as you grow. But there's nothing wrong with using that as a reference to keep your focus. Absolutely fine. But know that it will widen as you grow and grow wider in your own consciousness.
Vande Mataram, sir. I am Jaya, grade 8 in Abshijin. So you said that an aimless life is a miserable life. So I wanted to ask that when we have an aim, that would not give us deep satisfaction, but it is an aim. So we'll have a miserable life or happy life.
So it's all right to have a short-term aim as long as you keep what we discussed today as the broad, larger aim. And the larger aim is for you to develop yourself in your full potential and to serve a higher inspiration, intuition, and your soul's aspiration. This is the broad aim all of us will have. Within that, yes, you may have short-term aims, intermediate goals. Before you reach even that short-term aim, you may have intermediate goals. In the next 1 year, I want to do this. In the next 3 weeks, I want to do that. Yes, all that is acceptable. And they all set the pace broadly in the direction of your aim. They are all involved with developing your capacities, your skills, your plasticity, your intelligence, your strength, etc. So all those are good. But you must be conscious these are intermediate goals. Your life will not stop when you reach there and say, now I have nothing more to do, isn't it? So yes, please use intermediate goals and they're very useful as references, and that's why we have competitions. You see, when you have a competition and you're running together competing with each other, the goal is to get to that finishing line of 100 meters first. Yes, very good. But you don't define yourself based on how well you did there. You don't define yourself based on whether you reached it or did not reach it, isn't it? It's a means, it's an aid to focus your energies. So please use all kinds of intermediate goals, but they are not your ultimate life goals. Don't stop short with something narrow. Refer to it, yes, that's one of my intermediate life goals. Please keep that one of, and there'll be others which will come as you grow. Does that make sense?
Vande Mataram, sir. I'm Arti Kashyap of class 12th. So my question is regarding you. You also mentioned of the flexibility of the mind. So what will the method to increase the flexibility of the mind in the right direction? As it is also said that we are only the creator of our whole life.
Yes. So I don't know, where do you get that phrase, we are the creator of our life? Where is that coming from?
I have only listened.
Sorry?
I have only listened that we are
Okay. No, don't believe every phrase that's given to you. Or the phrase may have a truth, but it may be a partial truth. We are certainly creators of our life in the sense that you decide many things. But also there are other things that you're not conscious of which also influence your life. As I said, there are deeper layers within you that you may not be conscious of. And then there are circumstances of life which also influence you. So we are actually collaborators in our life. We can't say we are entirely our own creators. But having said that, your main question, I'm sorry, I missed your question. Can you just repeat the point?
how to increase the flexibility of
Flexibility, yes. So ideally, you should have flexibility of mind, flexibility of emotions, and flexibility of body. Because finally, what you want to express, either from your soul's aspiration or the higher intuition that flows, will always exceed a narrow limit. And the more flexible you are, the more effective you can be in whatever you choose to do, the more you are able to adapt to circumstances and make the most of them. You notice one of the features of inflexibility. People who grow old become inflexible, not only physically, emotionally and mentally, isn't it? They are old because they are inflexible. You may have met grandmothers or grandfathers who are very flexible and adaptable, and although their biology is aged, their mind is very young because they are flexible and can adapt. So in a sense, youth and flexibility and adaptability are common. Age is inflexibility, rigidity. Okay? So you must become flexible in all three parts, not just mind. And the three are interdependent. If you make your body flexible, you'll find your life energies are more flexible, and when your life energies are more flexible, your mind also can become more flexible. But there's a very specific training for the mind's flexibility. Two things you can do. One is read a lot of rich, diverse, provocative ideas. The more rich, the more diverse in terms of content, where people have gone into deep thought. And that's why some of these are called classics, because they represent a rich depth and diversity. But when people have gone into deep thought, you read them, it suddenly makes you question, yes, I never thought of that. And it's as if you're condensing many centuries of thinking into a few years. And you're getting the essence of it all. Forcing your mind to say, yes, this. But that's not enough. If you simply read and repeat, you become just narrow in what you have read. In reading, you must then question, how far is it true? At what point does this statement or this belief or this principle fail? And what is a condition where it actually becomes false? So you made this phrase, we are the makers of our own life. Yes, true, up to a point. Now describe to me the conditions where that's no more true. Where you actually cannot define or determine your own direction of life and form of life, and observe all that. Now you'll find you have a certain insight, and then you find its contradictions, its limits, and then you find even a contradictory statement. Can you now widen your perspective in which you can include both of these to become a complete vision? Now your mind will widen, it will become flexible. So there's actually a process of thinking, for which first step you use raw material of deep insights from other people's thoughts, and some of them may be well-known, famous authorities, but you have to question however great the authority is, question and look for the opposite and the contradiction of it and the failure of it, the limits of it, and then widen in your own thinking now a perspective which is more complete. And in this way you will train your mind to always go one level above, one wider step more complete, widening and becoming more flexible. So the first challenge when you read many things, it will force your mind to open to things you have never thought of or would not think of. But the second process will then make it truly flexible and rich and wide and independent of external inputs. And then you will have insights that you can say, yes, this. And others will say, yeah, that makes sense. What you say is so much more deep than what we read in that book. But that's how it will go. But do both. Read a lot, and the second, widen your mind by questioning the limits of whatever you have understood or read or what people say, and widening beyond.
Thank you, sir. So, my second question is that how to develop the capacity and the potential of accepting the challenges in even worse conditions?
What kind of challenges and what kind of conditions?
When we are not able to do the things, even the different types of challenges comes in our lives. So,
Like what, in your case? I'm trying to understand why this question came up.
in studies, there are several works
Okay.
come.
Okay.
So,
So sometimes you get overwhelmed by work and you're not able to overcome. There are two things you should do at that point. First, filter out what is more important from less important. You have to prioritize your time and your energies. I give an example here, and very specific maybe to someone of your age. I had once met a family here. They were from a different state, and I had recommended for the children in that, this was a girl of your age probably, and I said that she should do other things, go outside the boundary of the studies to develop other skills. And the mother immediately said, oh, but she has no time. I said, tell me, what is your schedule of the day? So they described the day. After school, you go for this tuition. After tuition, you go for another tuition. After that, you go for homework. And you have no time. Then I asked the girl, you're going for 2 tuition classes. Do you actually need them? She said, no. So I asked the mother, why are you putting her to a tuition class that she doesn't need? She said, just to be on the safe side. In case, they're teaching something there which others get but she doesn't get. So just to be on the safe side, you ram her through all these. It's wasted time. So you will have to assess what do you need and what you don't need. And prioritize your time. Drop out the things where you don't need. Keep the things where you need for your growth. Even if you set yourself as a goal, I want to intermediate goal. I want to get this exam, really crack it and do really well. Fine, that's an intermediate goal, for which I'm going to prepare like crazy and develop all the necessary skills, capacities. Fine. For which you may choose to ignore other things for a while. Fine. But afterwards you'll have to go back to those things. In any case, while you're doing that, what is important, what is not, and you will sift. And that choice has to be yours. Because your parents cannot. Out of fear, they will try to ram you through too many things. Isn't it? So you will have to assess, and then you'll have to build trust with them. That tell them, look, don't worry, I will take care of this. I can manage with this. I don't need that. And then find and schedule your time. So schedule your time based on priorities and your energies based on your priorities. Right now you have a limited capacity and energy. So prioritize, do the things which are most important first, and then fill in the time of the other things with the less important things. And I'm not saying you should deny anything which you find useful or helpful, but prioritize them only.
thank you so much, sir.
Madam, sir.
Vande Mataram, sir.
Vande Mataram.
Sir, you've talked about higher intuition. So I just wanted to know a few ways where we can open up to our higher intuition. We can actually realize it, manifest it into our lives.
Yes. There's actually a whole training program that you can follow, of which the first step is to train your mind to become absolutely quiet. Because as long as your mind is in a state of agitation and restless activity, you cannot access what is above. As an analogy, at night, when the sky becomes completely still, silent and transparent, you see the stars up to infinity. But the moment there's some activity of light or clouds agitating, it covers up and you cannot see the stars to infinity. It's something like this. Your higher ranges are already present. The knowledge is already held there. But as long as there is this intermediate agitation of the mind, and mind is a light, but it's an intermediate light, but it's agitating, always restless, it prevents you from receiving what is above. So the first training is to train your mind to become absolutely quiet. And in that state of quietness, then you can turn your mind upward and feel as if opening to a wide space above. And at some point you'll feel very quietly something descending, as if like an insight that comes in. and flash, you'll know, and you'll feel as if that knowledge descends into you. But at that moment, you could rush to seize it. I got it. No, you wait, because you train your mind to be quiet and remain quiet. You get a first insight, you say, wow, and you wait. And then there's a second insight, and sometimes a third insight. You wait until it finishes revealing itself, and then you move to now articulate or express or apply, whatever it is. So that state of total stillness is required first in the mind, and the same would apply even in action, in the energies, or even in the body. If you see a gymnast in the Olympics, you'll find her becoming completely still in the body to a point where actually nothing is moving, not even the mind is moving. And entered in that stillness, the flow begins, and the flow carries you. And the gymnast will actually say, I didn't feel I was doing it. I was as if watching myself, and the whole thing happened smoothly, effortlessly, and perfectly. So the same requirement, even for physical intuition, to become completely still, but all the way down into the body. That's the first step. The second step would be then to open above or within, to receive the insight that comes, knowing that it's already there and waiting to come. So if you are more interested in this, I could suggest a more detailed discussion on this in a series of talks which I have given, which I will send the details with Anjali ma'am. It's called How to Develop Intuition, and there are like 4 or 5 talks. Number 65 to 71 of the series called Evenings with Sraddhalu, where I discuss this in quite great detail.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much.
Anyone who's
Dr.
asking?
Huda. We
I-
close.
I
for
have a
today.
question.
We close for today.
I want to ask a
Oh,
question.
sorry. Okay.
So, can I ask a question?
Yes, surely, of
We
course.
have time? Okay. So, you see, this being a school, or for that matter, every educational institution, that will always have some parameters for the children to be able to choose certain subjects. And somehow, our society is such that there is still a leaning towards science and
Yes.
maths.
Career based.
Yes, career
Yes.
based. Now, as a school, it's like, how do we handle this? Should we allow a child to just take whatever the child wishes? If the child is not listening to the counseling, which the school feels, if the school feels a certain stream is apt for the child, but the child does not want to adapt to that, should the school decide or should the child decide? What should we do?
I would suggest that you let the child decide first, and then
Yes.
observe what happens. If at some point you see that that's working out and the child is in some way flowering, let that happen. The counselors generally think in terms of career and try to slot you based on your aptitudes, when in fact you are at an age when your flower is still blooming. The petals are opening. 1 or 2 petals have opened. You can't say, now because those 2 petals are opened for the rest of your life, you will go only in that direction. You have to wait to allow the whole fullness of the flowers to open. That's why I gave age 25 as your reference. But even if you take 18 or 20 or 21 as your reference, all your children are still too young to be given a specialization. And if the child has a strong urge to go in a particular direction, allow them and observe. If you find them flowering in that field, in that activity, in that interaction, they're just happy doing it, let it happen. Once that is fulfilled, you can slowly suggest to them to do something more in the direction that you think will be helpful, and without pushing it too hard, or which is the greater skill, but it demands skill from your teachers, in the scope of that activity, widen it to include the other dimension. Let's say the child likes to draw and paint. Allow the child this. After a certain point, you say, shall we use some of the artistic tools available on the tablet or computer screen, where you can do so many things which you can't do with color? And it's still in the domain of the artistic expression, but now in a more technically demanding space. And with that, you have, so to say, brought in the technical training in a domain which should have been otherwise purely artistic. Or in the art itself, how do you draw perspectives? How do you show different angles? and play with that, and there's a mathematics involved. Without going too much into the numbering, just the geometrical aspect of the maths can be introduced slowly as part of the art. Or the other way, if this child is only interested in the scientific or technical programming, you start with the programming, and then from there, can you use the programming skills to widen out into a more artistic space? And so it's the skill, because this is always possible between any subject, it's the skill of the teacher how you can slant from one to include the other and thereby widen out. So you use the specialized subject of the child's interest as a window to broaden out. That would be ideally the way to do. But your first question about career interests, see, there's a truth to it, that many will go to what they're told, or the parents will say, this is better for your career. That's fine. But there's also a truth to it that the future is becoming more and more based in the tools that computers and artificial intelligence are giving us. So familiarity with those tools will be helpful for everybody irrespective. So the skill will be again for the teacher. All right, we will use computers, but then since you are more interested in that field or you have an aptitude in that other area, can we blend these two somehow? And even through computers turn to whatever specializations. Not everyone, for example, will be as interested or skilled in computer programming. But sometimes I say precisely because you can't do it, that you should do it to develop or open that field or that aspect or that faculty. But that comes at a later age generally. That's when you can force it a little. At the younger age, you just allow them to bloom without any pressure. Typically, I will say up to the age of 10, 11, even up to 12, depending on the maturity of the child, just let them bloom freely. They will find their own way by giving them access to the variations the kinds that I am discussing. But after a certain age, especially when their mind is more individualized, you can actually say, look, this part you're weak. Let's do an activity in that part where you're weak, but link it with the thing where you're strong. So use the strength to address the weakness to overcome it. And then that would be a skill of the teacher.
So, but like when we talk of different subjects, so if I take the example of some academic subjects like physics or chemistry or maths, or for that matter, history or geography. Now, if a child, we've seen that a child has not been scoring, because you see, knowledge may be different from the marks the child
Yes.
has, but still some relation is definitely
Yes,
there between
sure.
them. That's the only parameter through which
Yes.
we at present,
Sure.
assess that. So now if the school has seen for almost 5 years, like ever since the child started learning more of physics and chemistry, he's not been doing it well, or he's not reached the level of the class, yet the child wishes to take. The
Okay.
child has either not made enough effort, and the school has made enough effort with the child.
Okay.
Or I usually never tell children you don't have the aptitude. I always tell them that you've not made enough effort, and
Okay.
you're not putting as much as you should be putting in this subject. So probably you don't have the skill to study this subject regularly. So you might as well choose something where you can study in spurts.
Mhm.
Because if it is chemistry or physics,
So
you
does
will-
this same child have other interests, or there's nothing else?
they may be having other interests,
Okay.
but if the school has this
Yes,
experience,
I get it.
that the school has already agreed to allow the
Yes.
children to take whatever they've taken, and then the school has seen that all 20 who were allowed, they have barely managed to pass
Yes.
in the ISC exams or in the school exams. So now that becomes the school's experience.
Yes. So what I would do in such a case, I would say, fine, since in the physics, this is as far as you're able to go, we will give you a limited exposure to the physics. And so you split between the physics, which is much more intensively detailed and more mathematical, to the less mathematical and experiential play of physics. And you'll find today a lot of very interesting channels. Physics Girl is one of the channels on YouTube where many experiments are shown, demonstrated. You can do those kinds of things where it's much more fun based, but the principles are understood, the process are understood without the maths. Generally, those who don't do too well, it's the maths aspect of physics which is difficult. But physics in itself need not be difficult at all, because you're dealing with ideas, and there you can go. You can stay within an accessible domain, even with complex ideas. And at the same time, then link it to the other activities and broaden it. That would be the way I would suggest. You actually split the group to those who go into an intensive exploration which is more mathematical versus those who do a more experiential and enjoyable exploration of the physics.
Yeah, but eventually you have to conform to the standards of the board and
Yes,
the
yes.
syllabus and everything.
You'll have to find a Y media, but then you will call that, let's say, experimental physics. Then it will not fit into the board structure, but it will be a useful activity for the child to open and develop.
Yeah, so the issue is that it's not a matter of interest, it's a matter of a career which they know more of. They've seen more people, just as
Right,
you were saying
exactly.
it, don't attach yourself to the form. So basically it is just that you're attaching
Yes.
yourself
But what
to the
age is
form.
this discussion about?
This
At what age?
discussion is about grades 11 and 12, about
Okay.
15 to 18,
Yes.
I'd say.
Yes. Okay.
So they are attaching themselves to that form. I got the answer from there,
Yes.
and I got the question from there as well.
Right.
That they are attaching themselves to the form, but they do not have the qualities of that form, and they're
Yes.
not ready to.
Yes.
know,
What they
bring-
do not have is the requirement for the specialization in that field.
Absolutely, absolutely.
But you can still take it in the interest which they have, and it may be a genuine interest, and allow the interest to flower as much as it can in the direction it wants, even if you don't get the high performance in the marks. I'll give an actual example here, which is somebody who I knew in my school, of one of the age groups, who was even slightly dyslexic, very slow in the physics, but had a real interest. Went through, and we had some of the children giving him time, sitting hours, to help him overcome the mathematical difficulties, etc. He completes his school in the ashram school, and then applies for an IIT, actually gets through the IIT. Today is a professor in a specialized field in computer something.
Wow.
Interesting. And nobody at that age, no teacher would have said this person will excel in physics. But the route he took, it was not a technical mathematical route so much, but a more applied route. In the physics, there are domains which are more applied and less technical, less abstract. But the problem is, for the exam, they focus only on the abstraction aspect, not the applied aspects. So you may still find the person, if it's a genuine interest, allow them, and they'll find their way. Even with low marks in their exams, they may get into positions of real joy that fulfills what they were looking for.
Thank you.
Vandamatam, sir. Sir, I am Arnav Dalmia from 80. Sir, my question is that you have told something about Elon Musk. Can you tell another person a short story for him?
Go on.
Sir, my question is, just as you have told a story on Elon Musk, can you tell someone like him only the inspiration person, like a source?
Yeah, there are several who can be inspirations. The point is that in all these, they developed certain faculties, capacities of theirs, and followed a line of development which was aligned to their soul. So yes, I could give you more stories perhaps, that may be interesting discussion in itself. I took Elon Musk particularly because in him we saw all four things quite well developed, and that is rare. In most cases, one of these aspects is more developed, two or three aspects. That's why we need teams. Elon Musk stands out because he's a one-man team, which is as if four people together, and even then he depends on others for specializations. But otherwise, you will find generally in any effective administration, there'll be 2, 3, 4, sometimes more teams, so that different people's strengths unite around a single objective. And that's why in you, the ability first to develop yourself as much as you can, but then also to be able to align to specific objectives as a team. It's a skill that one can develop, to work as a team. To work as a one-pointed leader is not very useful because you are incomplete. To work with a group is not easy because then you have differences of opinion. So how you can align that with your strengths is part of the training which you will learn in life as you go along. So Elon Musk is an exception in that. The more common thing is how you, with your specialized development, can work as a team with others to make a complete person who works as a team. You see?
Sir, can you name them others so I will do a research on them?
There are many. You will see examples, for example, people who have started from zero and built entire skills, capacities, and sometimes entire businesses, empires, like the Tatas would be a good example. J.R.D. Tata was a great example. He started many different industries and led them all to a certain level of excellence. There are not all have built the same way by the strength of their own innate strength. There are others who have built industries by utilizing opportunities which were unbalanced, let's say, by influencing the government policies and so on. That's a different mode of working. Here I'm giving examples where people have built on their own strength. So Tatas are a good example also. But the point is not that. You look at them for inspiration of how they did, not what they did. Because what they did today has no meaning. The world has changed. How they did was by developing themselves and committing themselves to a greater ideal than themselves. That's what you have to do. So you learn from that. If you like, you can also read and watch videos or stories of historical persons who have achieved something extraordinary, great leaders. Draw the inspirational content. Don't attach to the other parts which may not be relevant to you. There are many. But more important is what you find in yourself.
Thank you, Sraddhalu. We can close.
Yes. Very well. Shall we close with a short concentration?
Yes.
I would like all of you to review, dwell upon what we discussed, and so to say, imbibe, absorb, assimilate. Let it be your aspiration, your discovery, your knowledge, not something I told. When I spoke, if you felt a deep resonance in your heart, in your mind, somewhere in some part of you that said, yes, this is true. I know it is true. Catch that part where you know it is true. Hold that, stay with that, and then let that unfold. What I have shared is not mine. It's something you already know deep within. And if I have conveyed it in a certain way, it has helped to awaken what you already knew. Now it's your knowledge, and it's for you to realize and fulfill that potential which is within you. So hold this within yourself. We'll stay in concentration and also consciously dedicate ourselves, our lives in service of the Divine Mother, and especially in her form as Mother India, as Bharat Mata, in whose service we put our lives. Namaste.
Thank you so much, Sraddhalu. I'm so grateful. We are all so grateful to you. The children were not very happy that there's only one session.
Yes. I hope after this you will go back home and you will say, this was very interesting because I grew. That will be a reference.
Yeah, but we're all very greedy to get more and more from you. But thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Namaste. Bye to everybody.
Namaste.
Bye-bye.
Okay, we will silently
When can we get another session from you?